In this video, I'm going to talk about how I accidentally became an illustrator and built a successful career without actually knowing what I was doing at the time. When I look back on it now, it's sort of easy to piece together the puzzle, but at the time, I think I was just too stupid to know. I'm hoping that maybe you'll find some nuggets of information in here that may help you out. If you're new to this channel, my name is Piascik. I am an illustrator. Obviously, I just said that. And I make videos about illustration stuff. Sometimes it's product reviews, sometimes it's tutorials. If that sounds interesting to you, then maybe you should subscribe. All right, let's get into it. So this story begins all the way back when I was a little kid. I was obsessed with drawing. I'm sure many of you were the same way, but it was all I wanted to do. All throughout school, I was drawing. It was just my favorite thing to do. Not only did I enjoy drawing, it was sort of the thing that gave me a sense of worth or a little bit of self-confidence. I was a really shy kid. I was really bad at sports, so I was always last to be picked in gym class. I don't know, I felt like being able to do that kind of thing when I was a kid in school was like super important. And it made me feel bad about myself because I couldn't do it. But when I was drawing, I felt a little bit better because people would see my drawings and be like, oh, that's a pretty cool little monster that you drew. And I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not a complete worthless piece of trash. I continued to be drawing all the time. At one point, I thought it would be fun to like take apart the album packaging around the house and like redraw new covers for different like records and CDs and tapes or whatever that my parents had around the house. And at one point, I think it was my uncle said, oh, hey, you're going to be a graphic artist one day. And I was like, what does that even mean? Because I had no idea. I didn't know what he was talking about. And he was like, well, that's the person who makes that stuff. And I kind of knew that someone made it, but he's like, that's their job. And when he sort of said that was a job, it just blew my little kid mind. Like I couldn't even understand. All I could think about was like when we were in school and like people would talk about what they wanted to be when they grew up, and it was like fireman, policeman, chef. They all sounded terrible to me. I'm like, I don't want to do any of these things. I don't want to be a cop. I don't want to be putting out fires. I don't want to be an astronaut. I don't want to do any of that stuff. So my second thought was, have you told my mom? Because she works at the post office, sorting letters, and she also works at the grocery store. Maybe if you just go tell her, she could stay at home and make sweet logos all day and design album packaging. Again, I was a little kid, so I was stupid. I didn't really understand how things work. And just because something seems like a perfect thing for me doesn't mean it's perfect for everyone. And people have different situations. But what I did know is that there was no other choice for me. This set my path. I was going to be a graphic artist. The idea of growing up and doing anything else seemed just terrible. However, there was a time in high school where I questioned everything and almost threw it all away. I remember pretty vividly being in a high school art class and we were doing like a still life drawing of some fruit. I never liked drawing realism or just trying to reproduce something that I was looking at. That was never my strong suit, and I just thought it was boring. I wanted to make something new. I figured, why would I just make exactly what's there because we can all see it? I still felt like I had to do a good job. I mean, this was art class. This is where I was supposed to shine if I was going to do this for a living one day. And I remember looking over and seeing these two other girls in my class, and both of their apples looked just much better than mine. And I was like, I'm living in a small town and I can't even make the best apple drawing in my class. How on earth am I ever going to make it as a professional graphic artist? Whatever that meant. I still wasn't completely sure. So I sort of thought I was going to just do something else because I thought, you know, maybe this dream isn't a reality for me. Maybe I'm not good enough. I was signing up for classes for like the next semester or something. I think I didn't pick the art class or something like that. Like I wasn't going to take it because it's an elective. And I remember my art teacher saying, oh, why aren't you going to take this class? I really think you should. It would be good for you. And I was like, well, you know, I'm not really good at any of this stuff. And she was like, I don't know, she told me how great I was, gave me a pep talk. And she explained to me that being able to like do a realistic drawing of something is not what's important about being an artist or being an illustrator, even though I didn't know what illustration was at the time. I just thought it was all sort of the same. She was like, it's not about being able to copy something directly. It's about what you can communicate about that thing or how you can show something in a new way or express a feeling or anything like that. And she was like, you do that naturally in your work, and that's a very unique quality, and you know, you should continue on with this. I think you'll do really well. I am so thankful to this day that she helped me and guided me and kept me on the right path, because like I don't know what on earth I'd be doing if I gave up on art at that point. Also, hold on a second. She gave me the high school art department award, and she gave me this book, Humor and Art, to Chris, whose drawings always make me laugh. Look at how nice that is. So I graduated high school, got my art department award, went to art school, studied visual communication design. To be honest, I didn't really know that there was a difference between design and illustration. I mean, I did, but like I thought it was more sort of, I don't know, like when I looked at album packaging and there was like illustration, I just assumed the same person did all of it, and maybe not that like an illustrator was hired to do part of it. The design work that I was doing all sort of incorporated illustrated elements. I thought design was like the thing, and that's what I had to do. I actually did sign up for like a regular illustration class, and then I remember going into that class and it seeming exactly like the just traditional drawing classes that we had in our like foundations program, where you had to do a little bit of everything. And it was just like, you know, drawing from life, pencils, painting, watercolor. I was like, I don't want to do this again. I already did this. I don't like this kind of stuff. So I just like bailed and dropped the class. So I got a design job like right out of school. I was very lucky. And it was at this small little studio, and it was pretty boring. I did a lot of corporate work, branding and print collateral for New Alliance Bank or Yale Medical Group. Not the most exciting stuff, but it was a very small studio. So I learned a lot very quickly. I learned a lot about production. I learned a lot about working with clients, presentation, all that kind of stuff. Very helpful. So I was there for about 2 years. The reason I left was because I actually got reached out to by another studio in Boston that had seen the work that I had done in art school that I had put up on like an AIGA portfolio or something like that, which was music focused and looked like the kind of work that I wanted to do. I ended up getting that job and moved to Boston, and this seemed like my dream job. I was doing some artwork for the music industry. I was doing some album packaging. I was doing lots of fun branding, just the stuff that I imagined a designer would do. And I was like, man, my uncle was right. Speaking of which, he was right. Maybe he's right about the Q Pizza Gazzi stuff. Just kidding. Anyway, all my dreams came true. I was working on a design studio, doing the stuff that I wanted to do since I was a kid, and everything was great. There was one issue though. I realized that I wasn't drawing for just drawing's sake anymore. Drawing was such a huge part of my life. You remember I talked about how it was like the thing that gave me a little sense of self-worth, and just made me just, I don't know, it was a thing that I really enjoyed. And then the only drawing I was doing was just like sketches for design projects like comps and, you know, stuff like that. In order for me to do anything, I really need to like commit hard and like set rules. This was before I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I knew that I had to do a lot of things to trick myself into getting things done. I just didn't know it was ADHD at the time. I decided that I was going to commit to a daily drawing project. I think this was probably heavily influenced by Kate Bingaman Burt's daily drawing project, where she was drawing everything that she purchased and like her credit card statements. She was definitely a big inspiration starting out. So I committed that I was just going to draw something, anything, every single day, and then post it online, which at the time was my website and Flickr, because Instagram wasn't around yet. That's how long ago this was. Imagine a world without Instagram. It's easy if you try. So once I started doing these daily drawings, I just like kept doing them every single day. For some reason, it wasn't hard for me. I've always thought about how or why, because doing them for so many years, some people are like, oh, how did you do it for so long? You know, I can't believe you did that. I'm just realizing now that I think it sort of ties into my ADHD, because when you have ADHD, you have sort of like a dopamine deficiency. And by posting a new drawing on the internet every single day, you get that little dopamine hit where like you post something and then someone likes it, and it's just like that little thing. And then on top of that, I think we might be going down like a rabbit hole here, but there's like the tie-in with like ADHD and how it can be tied to addiction. I also have addiction in my family, and I have like that addictive personality. And I think maybe that could tie in too, where it's like I was addicted to that little, I don't know, like the dopamine hit from posting something every day. I don't know. This is just something that's occurring to me now, and maybe why I was able to do a daily drawing for so long when I can't even stick to normal things or start regular tasks. I have a whole video about how I was gonna get my shit together in 2023, managing my ADHD. And like, I haven't committed to a lot of the things that I said I was gonna do in that video because it's hard for me. But the daily drawing project, I did it. So after I did these drawings for a long time, I started like making stuff out of the ones I didn't hate, which wasn't that often, but some of them I'd be like, oh, this is pretty cool. Or if they got like a decent response on the internet, I would make like little prints. I made like GoCo prints. I even made some shirts. I'd like put little prints up in my Etsy shop every now and then. People would buy them. At one point, one of my prints got featured on some like design blog or something like that. And then like a whole bunch of them just sold. So I like sold out of them pretty quickly. I think that was the first time that I had made something from my drawings that actually led to something like that, where people were buying things or interested in my work. I think at that time, that was what gave me my first little boost of people following my work. So after about a year of posting daily drawings, I got reached out to by this lunchbox company that makes these like eco-friendly lunchboxes for kids. And they wanted me to do these like sticker sheets. And they said they had seen my daily drawings and like all the different lettering and little monsters I was doing and thought they would be perfect for little stickers for kids. So I was like, oh, but this is great. So I made the stickers, obviously. And this was, I think, my like first freelance illustration project that I got. At the time, I thought it was a fluke. I didn't think this was something that was going to be reoccurring. But then a little while after that, I got reached out to by this music publication. I can't remember which one it was. But they were doing like a new music feature at the time, and they wanted me to do an illustration for the band Surfer Blood. It was when their album came out, and I had just gotten it, and I was really into it. I was listening to it. I'll pop up the illustration right here. You can see I've got like the surfboard. I've got the blood. I covered all the bases, I think. So an art director saw that illustration in the music magazine, and I guess looked at my other work and saw some of the like the sticker sheets I was doing, and they were looking for illustrators to work on graphics for a line of snowboards for kids. So she reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to do some snowboard graphics? And I was like super psyched about this. I didn't snowboard or anything, but snowboards are cool, and I thought it'd be awesome to see my work on snowboards, so I was really into it. So things were going great. I was getting up in the morning, riding my bike to my design job, working there all day, and then I'd come home and do a little bit of freelance illustration work. It was perfect. I couldn't have asked for more. But then the economy crashed and I got laid off. This was back in 2009. I think pretty much everyone in the country, it was just like, all right, pack it in. We've had enough. Everyone's fired. I was faced with a big decision at that point because, as I mentioned, this was what I imagined my dream job to be ever since I was a little kid. And I knew I didn't want to go back to a job like my previous job doing like boring corporate stuff. And I had already gotten a taste of this like freelance work where I was doing just illustration work. It never even occurred to me that I could be an illustrator. I thought I had to be better at like, I don't know, actual life drawing, like the apple, or like whatever was happening in that illustration class that I signed up for and then dropped. So luckily, the economy was just in the toilet, and there wasn't a lot of job opportunities anyway. This gave me some time to try to like figure out if it was even feasible for me to do illustration like full time. And as I was trying to make this decision, I got reached out to by an art director at Nike wanting me to design 3 different shirts. I like sort of took this as a sign that I was like, okay, you can do this. Everything's going to be fine. The good thing about working with Nike is they're a huge company, so doing 4 graphics for them is a big chunk of change, which kept me afloat for a while. So I didn't have to immediately be concerned that I was going to be homeless. I just sort of doubled down on my daily drawings. That was like how I got all the work that I've done so far, and I just tried to make them better. And I had more free time, so I was like spending longer on these drawings. When I didn't have client work, I was just like, I gotta make my daily drawings even better, which doesn't show. When I look back at some of these early ones, they're not very good. I actually just released an ebook version of my first collection of daily drawings in my web shop, and I was very hesitant to do so because like when I look at those early drawings, man, there's some stinkers in there. That book's been sold out for a while, so I was like, okay, good. No one can see these drawings anymore. But I decided to make it available, so if you're interested in seeing it, it's out there. I don't recommend it though. I probably wouldn't buy it. So the hardest thing with the daily drawing project was like coming up with ideas. So I always looked to come up with like a series of things so that I wouldn't have to think of new things to draw. One of the first series that I did was like a drawing of every bike that I've ever owned. I talked about this in my drawing prompts video, but this kept me going for a while because I had too many bikes throughout my life. Making these nostalgic illustrations of bikes that I had when I was a kid and growing up and throughout my life led to other cycling enthusiasts seeing them and really resonating with them and being like, oh, I had that same bike, and like telling me a story about it. And, you know, people who are into bikes are really into bikes, and they just have all these memories and enjoy it. So they started following along on this series, and then led to more cyclists seeing this stuff. And I was like, wow, these drawings are doing really well. I can't believe it. And then at the end, I decided to make like a little zine out of them featuring all the bikes I've ever had, called it All My Bikes. Pretty good title. But like just making a little booklet, you know, it was like, felt like what I did as a designer, and it was like a way to tie the two together. So that zine ended up getting featured in Bicycling Magazine, which was crazy to me, but you know, bike people are really into bikes, and it was art about bikes. Being in Bicycling Magazine led to pretty much everyone in the cycling industry seeing that stuff because, you know, it's a relatively small industry, even though it seems like there's all these different brands. Like, but if there's like the main publication, other brands are going to see it. And this led to a bunch of different work for different bike companies. You know, when I look back on it now, I can think, oh, if I make art about bikes that people who enjoy bikes will want to see and want to look at and will resonate with, that will probably lead to getting to work with those kind of people. But this is not something that even occurred to me at any point. It was just an accident. It was just me trying to come up with some ideas for drawings so that I didn't have to think of something new every single day. So I ended up doing the cover for Dig BMX magazine. I did all kinds of graphics for standard bikes. I did a bunch of stuff with GT bicycles. Lots of bike industry work. State bicycles, all as a result of this just fluke of me just being like, oh, I've had a lot of bikes, I should draw them. You're not listening to a business mastermind here. So after I did 1,000 daily drawings, I decided I was going to make a book. Well, I decided before that, I think at like 700, I was like, I'm going to make a book when I get to 1,000 and it's going to feature all 1,000 drawings. And then when I got to 1,000, I was like, oh shit, I got to make this book. I knew that like I couldn't reach out to a publisher. I don't know. I just felt like I needed to do it myself. I think it was also just an excuse because I was too afraid to like approach a publisher and have them be like, oh, some of these drawings are just awful. Because some of them were awful. Like some of them at the beginning were just like quick little things. Like sometimes it was on like a scrap of paper. I remember getting like quotes for books and it was like so much money to get them self-produced. There wasn't like easy on-demand options at the time. There may have been like one or two, but they like weren't very good quality and it was very expensive. So I decided that the only way to make this happen was to use Kickstarter. So I was going to try to raise the money by like pre-selling these books to people and like other rewards and stuff like that. And this was like at the beginning of Kickstarter. So it wasn't as prominent as it is now. And that actually really helped me out because my project was able to get like featured as like the top project of the day. This led to like a bunch of other publicity because at the time there weren't as many daily projects as there are now. You know, there were 100-day challenges or like 30-day challenges, but like 1,000 days seemed like a huge amount. So it ended up getting featured on like, I think like Print Magazine and like Drawn, and it was even on like Oprah's blog, which was very weird to me. This led to my project being successful and got fully funded and super excited. This was very good because I was convinced that if my project failed that I would have to stop being an illustrator and have to just like go get a job at like Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. I honestly thought it would be a reflection on my value as an illustrator, which is ridiculous, but that's just how I felt firmly. So the book got published. I sold a bunch of them. Things were pretty good. I was still pretty stressed because like, although I was getting work somewhat regularly, it wasn't regularly enough that I didn't need to be stressed. So I was still like grinding, if you will, hustling to the max, if you will. I started to like make these tighter lettering things that were sort of reminiscent of logo lockups like I did at my design job, with just like weird little phrases or quotes and stuff like that. Because my work had been getting a little bit more visibility at this point because of the daily drawing collection, that led to an art director seeing my work, an art director at Facebook. And Facebook hired me to do like sticker sets that were like phrases to use as stickers. This was when they were first starting to use stickers. And it was sort of perfect for the kind of work that I had been posting at the time. I didn't make that work thinking it would be perfect for that application. It was just like, I like to do lettering and I have a weird sense of humor and weird quotes, and I have this design background so I can make it look like a finished logo type situation. Just not putting two and two together in my head. So I did a bunch of stuff for Facebook. That was awesome. Also good for my mom, who had a hard time understanding. I guess she still sort of has a hard time understanding what I do for a living and worries that because I don't have a normal job that I'm probably going to be homeless soon. So her being able to see my work on Facebook on a regular basis was, I don't know, maybe a helpful reminder that I'm doing okay. So sometimes these series that I would come up to would just maybe just not be like a serious series, but more of just like a joke or like a funny idea. And one of those was like just making fake packaging for like food things, like these Trump cheese puffs. I don't know, like the Cheeto thing, the Big League Spew. These were dumb Trump jokes before anyone thought it was a possibility that he may actually be the president, which anyway, I made these funny little fake packages. And the timing was great because his art director that was working with Harvard on this project in Boston, they had this building and they wanted to draw some attention over there and like make some things happen. So they decided to like take this building and use it for different pop-up events. The first thing was they were going to do this like artist pop-up shop. The agency that hired me had this idea to like make it bodega themed because that's what the building used to be. They wanted me to make fake packages and fake bodega signs that were like about art and stuff like that. So it was just like a perfect project for me. Me putting out those drawings led directly to them finding me to do that kind of project. This project was really fun to work on, but it also involved huge graphics on the outside of a building, which was on a main road in Boston. So lots of people in Boston would just see this wall of graphics as they drove by. And this led to a bunch of projects within that area. It led to a project with Converse, which is located there, Boston Magazine, actually a project with Google that was partnered with two of the universities in the area. I don't know how to tie this all together, but it's like, I don't know, I was just making stuff that I wanted to see or something that made me laugh and that resonated with other people. And all this stuff sort of has like a snowball effect where it just sort of expands in ways that you wouldn't expect, or maybe you would expect, and you're better than me at understanding business and marketing. So at some point in this time frame, some of this may be mixed up a little bit. But anyway, I learned how to make repeating patterns. And this was one of those like mind-blowing events for me because you could take some mediocre drawings and like put them in a little jumble and then like make it into a repeating pattern. And it just looks so much cooler when it was infinity. I don't know why. I think it's sort of how a mediocre design, when it's letterpress printed, looks even better. I think patterns do the same kind of thing. Because I would just like doodle some weird little stuff and then repeat it and be like, whoa, it's so much better. And I was just making tons and tons of patterns and just posting them online as daily drawings. So many patterns that in my second collection of daily drawings, another 1,000 days of drawing, there's like a whole section of patterns and you just like flip through pages and pages and pages of weird patterns. So posting this many patterns on a regular basis online led to someone at Nickelodeon seeing it, and they were looking for someone to create patterns with different things from their shows and elements so that they could use across a number of different things. They reached out to me, and this sort of blew my mind because Nickelodeon was definitely on the dream client list. And I ended up making a bunch of different patterns with different things, like different characters from shows like SpongeBob and Ninja Turtles, and just like drawing them in my own style and making these jumbles. And now in like the New York headquarters of Nickelodeon, there's wallpaper on the walls with my artwork. There's furniture with patterns that I drew on it. It's outrageous and mind-blowing. So doing that kind of stuff led to other work with clients like Viacom and Cartoon Network. And again, it just sort of grows from the visibility that you get from these different projects. Okay, so this last example was probably the biggest in terms of its financial impact on me and in my career. And this is the one that I was sure had no value to my career. I remember even like sort of justifying making this stuff to myself because I thought it was maybe like a waste of my time. So what I'm talking about is just like simple little animated GIFs and loops and stuff like that. And hearing this in this time, in this world that we live in, you're like, yeah, obviously that's a very marketable thing to do. But this was before a lot of things happened. So let me just talk about it. I think I like downloaded a GIF on my computer for some reason. I don't know. I thought it was funny. And I remember opening it on my Mac and it opened up in preview and it like showed all the frames. So like you see like the sort of flip book level. It was a pretty crude in terms of animation in the GIF, but like being able to like see it frame by frame, I was like, oh, interesting. I knew how to like make a simple GIF in Photoshop in terms of just like having something change where it was just like, you have an image and like a word pops up or, something changes. I knew how to do that. And I was like, maybe I could make animations like this. I just sort of started experimenting, morphing like one word into another word. I'm not sure why that was the go-to, but it seemed like the easiest thing to try for me. I started with words that were like the same length and then, just change one letter into another letter. I did more and more of those. And then I started getting more adventurous where I was like trying to morph a word into an object and then maybe like an object into another object and just making these loops and experimenting and having fun. And I remember thinking like, these are kind of a lot of work. They're probably not great for me to show because I'm trying to get hired to do illustration work and I'm not going to get animation work based on this. I don't want to do animation, but I want to play around with these little GIFs. So I was like, well, you know, maybe someone will think it's funny or they'll like it and they'll look at my other work and then they'll see my illustration work and hire me. So that's how I justified it to myself. This was all sort of like right before this whole like social media advertising thing just sort of blew up, where all these brands were like getting on social media and having their accounts and just needing tons and tons of content. As you know, because this is the world we live in now, there's just all kinds of little looping animations that are, you know, all kinds of brands are using. They're all over social media. And because I was posting this kind of stuff, I started getting a bunch of work from these like big brands wanting me to create social media advertising things, just like content that they could use. And the great thing about social media advertising is that it has so much more creative freedom than typical advertising projects, because they're able to target to such like a specific niche and try to like get new audiences. So like they'll hire an illustrator whose like style will resonate with like an audience they're trying to target, because like they want people to engage with them. And if they want people to engage with them, they need to post things that is relevant to them and things that they would enjoy seeing. Otherwise, why would anyone follow these brands on social media? The other thing is it has a really short shelf life. So they're much more willing to be more free with creative freedom, and like you don't have to make something that's going to resonate with just a huge audience, because again, they can target really specific niches of people. And the other reason it's great is because it's still an advertising project, so it still pays really well. So as I mentioned, this was like by far the most lucrative happy accident of my career, was making these little looping animations, because it led to just a lot of advertising work through social media. These experimental looping animated GIFs were definitely the biggest example of me not knowing what I'm doing, but still doing the right thing, I guess. I kept doing the daily drawings for like 14 years. A little over 14 years, mainly because I was just too scared to stop. Everything that I had achieved was as a result of my daily drawings. I didn't do any like traditional promo work besides the daily drawings. So I thought if I stopped my daily drawings, my career is probably going to be over. The only reason I did stop was because I had a child almost 2 years ago, and I physically could not keep up with the daily drawings and client workload and everything else in my life. So I stopped. At this point, my career is still moving forward, luckily, but who knows? It could be slowly dying because I haven't been doing the daily drawings. Just in case, why don't you just go ahead and like this video and subscribe, so that if my career falls apart, that maybe there's a chance for this thing to sort of take off and move forward. Hopefully there was something in here that you found useful. If you're interested in starting a daily drawing project, I would check out this video where I talk about a whole bunch of ideas that can sort of keep you going through a long-term daily drawing project. Okay, good talk.